Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals, one of the most watched and listened to podcasts dealing with addiction and recovery. And we were just talking about analytics before we started recording this, and we can reach upwards of tens of thousands of people or just a few hundred who listen or watch the whole podcast. So it's sort of interesting to see those analytics.
Yeah.
And
kind of wild how many it reaches.
I know, and all over the world, too. The funny thing, we can, a couple of times we've gotten through where all we're watched or listened to, and we're as far away as we have one or two people in Russia, a couple people in Ukraine, and all the European countries. It's really, we always made this offer that if the guy in Russia who listens to us wants to come here and visit, we'll buy him some good vodka as opposed to that cheap stuff he's drinking in Russia.
Yeah.
So, but he's never taken us up on that. So I'm Randall Carlisle, my co-host Nicole Slack. Our guest today is Skylar. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. And Skylar, and again, this is not even though it's called Odyssey House Journals, which I guess sort of promotes Odyssey House, but it's not designed to promote Odyssey House. But Skylar is a resident of Odyssey House, and I got a note from who did I get a note from? An email saying you wanted to do this for your labor of love. So maybe we should describe what a labor of love is.
So a labor of love is when you get to the level navigator, is where you're just basically giving back to the community, basically just kind of giving back as a servant leader.
So you want to give back to the community
Correct.
Through this podcast. And I guess without us, or Nicole or me asking questions, what do you want people to take away from hearing your story?
I just feel like I got a positive message
About?
just my recovery, just about other people being able to do it themselves. I mean, I went through it, so I could see why other people wouldn't be able to find it inspiring and do it themselves.
We hope to provide hope. We're all Nicole's in recovery. I'm in recovery. You're obviously in recovery. And there is always hope. I mean,
Yeah, it just comes at like different times when it hits, and I think it's so good to share your story because someone can relate, and there's people that can't relate to me that will relate to you. So I love that you're sharing.
Thank you.
So how did your issues with addictions begin? And how long did they last, and what were they?
So I was using for probably a total. I made it a lifestyle for like 7 years. It all kind of started when I got so fixated into this toxic relationship because I was just kind of having these codependency issues with this lady, and I was using methamphetamines at the time. How I started using methamphetamines was because I was just traveling around homeless. My family was wondering when I was going to try to get it together. Was kind of had it with me at the moment, so they were just kind of let me out of the house.
Did they force you out of the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Led you out of the house is an interesting term. So they basically booted you.
Yeah.
For your drug use or your behavior?
Just both. They didn't know I thought they didn't know about the drug use, but clearly through my behavior, you could tell that I was on drugs, So that's what led to them just kind of kicking me to the streets. So I went to go travel in Midvale. And if people know what Midvale was all about back in 2015, 16, it was just pretty much just about hotel hopping. And that's when I met this girl at a Taco Bell parking lot.
How romantic.
Yeah, no kidding.
Taco Bell parking lot.
And I had this addiction to meth. She had this addiction to heroin, and we basically kind of got together and kind of swapped addictions.
That's a beautiful meet cute.
Yeah.
Taco Bell and addictions.
Yeah, Taco Bell parking lot, heroin, meth. God, this is a movie script, right? Right. A romantic comedy. So that didn't work out.
No, obviously not. But after pretty much just going in and out of jail, I was just trying to figure out how I was going to do it, how I was going to stay on top, and basically my game plan wasn't really working out, because basically when I would go to jail, I would sit there and try to link up with these people that were in there, so how I could get the best prices and stuff. And next thing you know, when I get released, it's just down to the same cycle all over again. And it's pretty much it. Like,
So when you were in jail,
Yeah.
you were looking for prices for when you got out of jail.
correct.
So you're a planner.
Yeah.
I
A
like
business
it.
plan
Yeah.
in jail. Yeah, and it didn't work well.
No, not at all.
How did all this end and bring you into a treatment program?
Well, so I ended up getting extradited out because I caught charges out. And so I was in another relationship where we ended up going to Elko, Nevada. And I ended up getting arrested out there for it was a retail theft. And I ended up getting stuck in the system out there, to where I got out, wasn't able to comply with probation and stuff because I was on dual probation at the time with Elko and APMP, and then Utah APMP. But it just made it like a little bit more difficult, to where this seems like the easier option was just like to run, because that's what I was just used to doing every time. And when I just realized that family got in touch with me, and I realized that it was time to kind of clean it up. You know what I mean? Every time I talked to my dad, he'd let me know, like, hey, look, you're 30 years old. When are you going to get this together? And I was getting tired of living the same lifestyle for 7 years. And so I had this like soul searching moment in Salt Lake County Jail, to where I was gonna just kind of clean it up. I was put on drug court, got to this ASAM score where I was supposed to do a first step. But I heard that if you do Odyssey House, if you go about Odyssey House a certain route, then you'd be able to work for him. And that seemed like an idea that I liked, and so that's kind of the approach that I've kind of been doing.
So that's what you want to do?
Yeah, that's correct.
A lot of people, and you and I have talked about this in past podcasts, is a lot of people on the outside don't understand the concept of peer support in a therapeutic community, and will say stuff like, well, you got a bunch of drug addicts working there. How can that be helpful to my loved one when they're hanging around a bunch of drug addicts? Explain that.
I think that a lot of people think that it could be toxic to have people who are drug addicts working in the field, but I think we have a lot to offer, an insight. I mean, your insight maybe for future clients. And I think that I saw all of staff the same, whether it was they were addicts or not. I don't know.
Well, I think it's important. I've heard a lot of people say that they can spot. I mean, in other words, if I'm a case manager or a peer support specialist or something, and I'm working with you, and you hand me a line of crap, okay, I can spot that because I've been there and I did the same line of crap, right? And so it works.
It does.
You know, as opposed to somebody who hadn't been there and maybe has a lot of book learning, but not real life learning. They're not going to spot you being pseudo-sincere, saying, you know, whatever. It just seems to work better, and it's worked for decades now in recovery in treatment programs, is to have people working alongside. Why would you want to work in a place like Odyssey House? Because it can be frustrating, and it can be sad. I've been saddened, even though I don't work directly with clients. I'll get to know some clients, and then I'll hear that they passed away from an overdose, or and I'll think this person was going to really succeed, and I'll hear they went LACA and never hear from them again. So why would you want to work under knowing that these things happen?
Well, there's good things and there's bad things to everything in life, and I think that's just with this type of field, especially with what I've seen just being in residential alone, that's just what you got to deal with being in that field.
Do you find those frustrations sometimes? You get close to some of the clients.
Yeah, but I also think from being a client, I just know that you help who you can, because if they want the help, they're going to take it. And some people don't want it or don't need it. But also, I had clients in the house that changed my life, and some of them went back to using, and some of them I never saw again, but they changed my life in that moment. And so I can just hope to do that for someone else.
You brought up a point. I facilitate a family support group every Tuesday night, and these are primarily parents of adult kids who are dealing with addiction issues, and it can range anything from their kid being out on the street, being homeless, being in jail, being in a treatment program, and we talk about things like setting boundaries and enabling. And your parents, you said, booted you out of the house.
Yeah.
Was that good or bad?
I think it was good, because it let me know. To me, it let me know that my family wasn't willing to take no shit over my addiction. They weren't going to be. So I always kept them at a distance. I wasn't trying to steal from them. They knew better not to. I think it was just them kind of just holding their boundary.
And you think that's a good thing?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the parents that I deal with will say stuff like, "Oh, my kid called me and he needs money for food," supposedly.
Yeah.
Or he lives at home, but he treats us terribly. Or he or she. I shouldn't just. It's not just guys. Or he or she steals from us. But I feel bad, like in the dead of winter, booting them out of the house. Any thoughts on that?
I just know I've been there.
And the thing I always say, because I know this is true,
Yeah.
is that you find a way to survive on the street.
That's right.
And say, at the time we're recording this, temperatures are really cold outside.
Yeah.
How do you survive in frigid weather?
That's just, for me, that's when I would just, so there's a term called boost. Have you ever heard of that? Boosting, shoplifting from stores or whatever. And I just would do what I could do to just make money to live in hotels. But it's not going to last long, you know what I mean? Because things happen where you end up like losing a deposit, and it's just, things just end up happening when you're on drugs trying to live in that hotel life.
How long were you homeless?
7 years. Well, I would say, I know that I was using for 7 years, so it all started when I was in 2015 is when I started being homeless, and then till now, this time I got residential, yeah.
And
But back then, like right now I tell you, yeah, I was homeless. But while I was in the middle of my addiction, I'd say I would have tried to put on this facade like I was above that, because I was staying in hotels.
yeah.
See, I'm not technically homeless.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not lying out on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You want to provide hope for, how long have you been in Odyssey's program?
Been here for a year.
A year?
That's right.
Wow. So you've had some ups and downs through the program.
Well, yeah, I've had a few boarders, but other than that, I think it's just more of I've invested the time that I've had in residential because I'm trying to do this For real. Not just trying to please a court. I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I'm really trying to go about Odyssey in a way to where like I'm just trying to get the most that I can out of it.
Is this your first time in treatment?
No, it's my second one. First time I got kicked out for using, and that was the worst relapse that I'd ever had in my whole entire life. There's nothing more worse than having a relapse when you got a head full of treatment.
Wow. Same program or a different program?
No, it was the Haven.
Okay. And that's a smaller program than Odyssey House. And back then, I don't know how the rules are now, but back then, when I was familiar with it, you had to be voted in by the other residents there and can be voted out.
At the Haven?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's all new to me.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Like the admission process, you have to have a meeting, and this was years ago, but you have to have a meeting with all the residents, and they get to question the prospective client, and they can say no, and they have control.
I could see benefits, but
Yeah. So,
I think of all the different personalities in every different Odyssey house,
Sure.
and if we voted,
Right.
yeah, we wouldn't have
popularity
clients.
contest.
Yeah.
It'd be the one who could BS the best.
Oh,
and
yeah.
who would get in. Yeah, that's a weird concept. I don't know if they had ultimate authority, but I know that they had those meetings and took votes. So anyway, one of my ex-girlfriend's daughters was in it. That's how I know. And I was married, and you initially you probably were blaming your messed up love life as
That's
a
right.
reason to use, right?
Well, yeah, so I was so fixated on these, yeah, that's it.
I've been through 4 divorces, and I blamed every one of them for the divorce, and for my drinking, and they were not responsible. I was.
Right.
But it took me years in recovery to admit that, and that's hard to admit that I screwed up 4 marriages, but it's in the past. So.
Yeah.
And even though I've been clean for 11 years, I'm never getting married again. So that way I can't screw it up. Is that a negative way of looking at life?
I think that's a thinking error. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it? Well, it's working so far. What message of hope would you like? There's all kinds of people watching or listening to this. I doubt if there's very many people in active addiction who are listening to a 30-minute podcast or watching it, but there's a lot of loved ones of people who know people in addiction who watch or listen to these podcasts because they're looking for help. And so what kind of words of hope can you give about recovery being possible?
You just got to stick it out. That's what I would tell you if we were in the same drug court. You just got to stick it out. I would just say, I don't know, like Vivitrol has helped me out a lot. It's just, I don't know, I really didn't really have time to think about this.
Well, and we should mention, if you've never heard of it, Vivitrol is a non-opioid treatment option for people in our program, and it works especially well with alcohol and opioid addiction in terms of blunting. I'm not sure how it works. The receptors in your brain just don't receive the euphoric feeling that they used to.
Yeah.
Is that a fair description?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a 28-day, a 1-month shot, so you don't have to worry about taking a pill every day. And it worked for you. I used it too. When I tried to get sober. Yeah, and it worked. I heard the worst part of it is that the point of injection is very sore sometimes.
Yeah, it can be.
But that's true of a lot of shots,
Yeah.
right? And how long have you been on Vivitrol?
Since I've been on it for almost a year.
Okay. Are you going to keep doing it?
Yeah.
Good, good. And how are you going to prevent? At some point, you're getting out of Odyssey, and maybe you come back to work at Odyssey. But how are you going to prevent a relapse? And relapse prevention is one thing that's dealt with in all of our programs. How are you going to? What's your relapse prevention plan?
Just kind of lean on my support, and also, so one thing that I've definitely learned here at Lighthouse is just kind of like having love for myself, and just kind of what I like to do is positive self-talk. That's my biggest reframe. I feel like is just kind of not being realistic and being just that's just what I've always called it, positive self-talk.
Are you going to be doing IOP or GOP?
IOP, yeah,
Awesome.
and revoyaging out.
That's cool. So
Same.
That usually helps, staying connected.
Yeah.
so you could be in this program. How long before you graduate from? If you're taking the IOP route, like 2 years, a year and a half.
He's doing Voyagers is GOP, so you will be doing a minimum of 3 months. Are you planning on, do you want a fast graduation, or do you just want to write it out?
I'm just trying to, just however long it takes. I'm not really in a rush. Anytime I'm in a hurry, it's where it leads for me to get high.
At least you know that,
Yeah.
and you're aware and acting on it. I love that.
Isn't that a great attitude? Saying, as long as it takes for it to work. That's a wonderful attitude, and that's not what you see in a lot of residents. It's like, how soon can I get out?
As soon as I hit disco, I'm gone.
Yeah, I've heard
How
that
many
a
times
lot.
do you hear that? Yeah.
And when they say disco, it's discovery. It's one of the levels in our program. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. What have you had to deal with a negative? If at the time you blamed it on bad relationships with a woman, okay, have you had to deal with a negative relationship since you've been in recovery? I presume you haven't.
No, I haven't.
Well, that's sort of a leading question, because we're not supposed to have relationships
Yeah.
while we're in recovery. In the future, are you going to date somebody who's in active addiction?
Oh, I could not do that. So I've always had this thought to where I feel like that's all I would really, I don't know if this is me selling myself short or something, but I feel like that's all I could ever attract, is that I'm going to be able to attract is someone that's in recovery, because they'd be able to understand what goes on. You know what I mean?
Right. So,
But that's just, I don't know if that's just a thinking error within itself, but I don't know.
we all have a lot of thinking errors. Like, I'll never get married again. Okay, and I'll never date, or I can only date people who are in recovery.
Yeah.
And that is one of the. What have you thought about that? You're divorced, right?
Yeah.
Would you date? Would you go out with a recovering alcoholic since you were addicted to alcohol?
I guess I never put any limitations on it. I figure
Okay.
I'm just going to be 100% honest with my past
Yeah.
and hope they do the same. So addict or not, this is who I am. This is where I failed. And we'll just see where it goes. I have said in the past I'll never get married again. So
Oh, wow.
even
Join
when
the
I'm
club.
teasing you about it, I'm like, I totally said that. But I sit still I'm just open to things. I just want to be very honest going forward, because being not honest didn't get me anywhere. So
Right.
I think I'm just open.
And one thing you said that you basically were implying is that you've learned to love yourself,
That's right.
right? And I think that's so critical in terms of anyone's recovery. I mean, did you love yourself when you were in active addiction?
No. I was actually really ashamed when I started using, because I was working a job, had my own apartment, and that was just the shame in the back of my mind every time when I'd go to work, or if I was high out of my gourd. But I was maintaining that graveyard shift or whatever. But I still knew in the back of my mind that what I was doing it wasn't fulfilling for me at all. It was really conflicting with what I was doing, and I knew that.
I think shame. I think if you ask anybody in our treatment program, if you feel shame over what you did, they'd all say yes, don't you?
Yeah, and I think the therapists, the number one thing they do is work on shame. Like with me anyway, like I took it, you even said something else, which was having so much treatment in your head during your relapse.
Yeah.
That's shame. So have you learned to work through that?
Yeah. I think so.
Do you have a plan for a relapse?
No, but I'll have one here shortly.
Because you'll have to.
Yeah.
So when you look in the mirror, what do you think about yourself now? I'm not saying, I'm a handsome stud who everybody wants, but I mean, do you like yourself?
Yeah.
Do you love yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of what I'm capable of, and I just I think that me being at Odyssey House has kind of helped me open helped open my eyes as to what I see in the mirror every day versus what I used to be. Wasn't trying to use the word ashamed of, but back when I was getting high, just kind of being sucked up and unhealthy. I noticed every time I'd get arrested in jail, and it'd be that first look in the mirror after you get arrested, and you're like, damn, it's a good thing they got me when they did, because I look horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mug shots are not the most attractive shots in the world.
So I got to tell you something. This last time I was in jail, you can purchase your mug shots, right? And I thought it would be funny for me to purchase all these mug shots of myself that I've had at Salt Lake. And I thought it would be like a funny story or something to kind of laugh about when I would get them. But it did the complete opposite. When I saw them, I was just more like, holy shit. It was just more of a reason why I wanted to change things.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people do their then and now shots, and there is such a change in the way people look, because people look so troubled, and it's just, I mean, and really uneasy and not happy, and then you look calm and collected and cool and happy. You know,
Yeah. I didn't know you could purchase your mugshots.
Yeah.
Hell, we used to get, when I worked in television news, we just had to make a phone call and they'd send them to us electronically. So anytime anybody got arrested, we could put them on the air. They have now since passed new rules that they don't do that, because it's just being arrested does not mean you're convicted. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty unfair to take your picture and say you were busted last night because you haven't even been to court. But it was fun for the TV station to get these pictures. So thank you for joining us and passing along your message of hope. It was good seeing you for your labor of love.
Yeah, thank you.
And good to see you again, Nicole.
You too.
And thank you for listening or watching to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.